Hi guys, welcome to vlearnias. Today we are going to have a discussion on editorial and news analysis dated 17th August 2022. So let's begin the discussion. A general topic which comes in news very frequently about a balance between ecological sustainability and environment development. So let us look into what is the issue and what is analysis all about. So, what is author saying about, and what is author contextualizing all about? The author is saying about our country is witnessing a very dangerous air pollution level. That means around 480 million Indians are facing extreme air pollution level. This is already witnessed from the current Delhi air pollution. Delhi is now currently like a smoke chamber. I personally stayed in Delhi during the winter season. It is very hard, difficult to have a breathe during the winter times, especially after the Diwali celebration and everything. So to an adult like us have that much problem, then what is to the infants and the young population have? So it is very crucial for to uh, crucial how the future generation will sustain such an very drastic ecological area. So this is what the author is contextualizing. And also a Nidhi Aayog report is there, which also states that 600 million people in India face high level of water stress, and nearly 70% of water being contaminated. India is placed 120 among 122nd countries in the water quality index. So it is a very important fact to be remembered about our how vulnerable we are to the water stress. Okay. So mainly this indicator is given by Nidhi Aayog. And apart from that, another ecological indicator like land degradation, desertification is also taking place. This is given by the report by ISR. So, whenever a question comes on environmental pollution, especially in this question comes in main point of view, always contextualize on the basis of various ecological unit. Example, we can have an ecosystem unit in air ecosystem. Then comes water ecosystem. Then comes land ecosystem. All these three ecosystems together constitute what is known as biosphere, and this biosphere in turn sustains human life. Okay, so whenever a question is asked about environmental pollution, you must have a note on all the three type of ecosystem and how this ecosystem balance is very much essential and how this imbalance is affecting the human existence. This is what the environmental pollution is all about. Okay, let's continue discussion. So this is a clear picture about a landslide that occurred in Kerala, especially during the high peak of monsoon time in the northern part of Kerala, which is in hilly areas, face very distressed landslide. This is mainly because there is a very high illegal construction and settlements in the hill slope region, which destabilizes the slope, further leading to such a huge disaster like this. Okay, recently a very good movie is there like Malayang a movie, a Malayalam feature film, which gives an account of how distress is this landslide is all about. So the author is also giving more picture about how the earth is under stress. So according to the author, the average level of land productivity are 1/4 and 1/5 what they could be. That means if our land can produce about four, four of it, then currently it is only producing about 1/4 of it. That it is mainly because of increased use of artificial fertilizer and which further degrades the soil further. That means increased use of artificial fertilizer is degrading the soil health. And also in terms of food items, in most of the cities have pesticide. That means high level of pesticide residues there in the food items that are mainly used in urban areas, especially in city areas. Okay. So the author is blaming this upon the World Bank. He was saying that the World Bank is partially responsible for to understanding how this type of incidents happen. This is mainly because of unsustainable development pathway that we have approached since post-reform period from 1991. The same study is given by the Yale and Columbia University, which puts India at the bottom among 180 countries in the ranking. That means currently the country is giving the dividend in the form of environmental stress as a part of economical development. That means we are having economical development, at the same time we are having a disastrous environmental distress. Okay, so why such condition is occurring in our country? The first and foremost blame is on corporate access. That means the government is providing much and much access to the corporate people. For example, our our government and everybody is obsessed with a calculator not a, or a economical indicator known as GDP. GDP is the sum total of goods and services that is produced within a boundary of a nation. Okay, but this GDP does not take into account the human well-being. It only takes the sum of how much we produce, but it does not take into concept of quality of that we produced. For example, if we are producing a lot of automobiles in our country, so we are having huge quantity of output, but at the same time for that production we are destabilizing the various ecosystem, which is degrading in the quality of our ecosystem in totality. So it is leading to a very high level of exploitation. So despite the public posturing about sustainable development goals, the natural elements are also going under various stress. Example, land, water, biodiversity, and air, which is continuously ignored and molded. That is also saying that we are currently focusing on our SDG goals, but still then also we are polluting majority of our ecosystem components. This SDG have 17 goals, around 169 targets. After this adoption also still we are polluting lot of our ecosystem units. So in fact the government is dismantling environmental and social security policies in favor of other corporate access. That is what the authors argue, and he is giving an example for the environment impact assessment notification. That is environment impact assessment. It is mainly carried out to know how a developmental project impacts an environment. For example, if we are building a dam in an area, first of all an environmental impact assessment study is carried out on how much impact it has on our natural ecosystem or human ecosystem, and in totality how much it is beneficial. A cost benefit analysis carried out. Everything is looked upon this EAA notification. But in recent EAA notification, which is an amendment to earlier one, it relaxes certain norms and favors these corporates to carry out more profitable outcome from their own establishment in this environmentally fragile area. This is mainly unlike building up of massive physical infrastructure. Example, in the name of tourism, we are actually killing very fragile biodiversity in hilly and ecologically hotspot area. Similarly, the author is also pointing about the budget allocation we are having. The budget of 2022-23, the Ministry of Highways alone is got 40 times more than the Ministry of Environment. That is, Ministry of Environment is given lesser attention. And this environment ministry mainly looks upon environment integrity. Even in our civil service exams also there is an separate post of Indian Forest Service, which is an all India level cadre post. But the allocation for these all activities is very much less than compared to other ministries. Okay. So the author saying that this significant turning point occurred from the economic reforms of 1991. Thus, in 1991 we have what LPG reform, that means liberalization, privatization, and globalization reform. So we have to be integrated with our global economy. As a result, more and more corporations were invited to the countries. What they did was they exported our valuable natural materials and imported the toxic waste, or dumped the toxic waste from their places. This has led to the issue of environmental sustainability in our country. An example for this is mining projects in very fragile areas. Example, Nayamgiri tribes in Odisha fighting against Vedanta, um, a mining group. I think this is the main core idea of the movie Avatar of James Cameron. The Avatar movie that you have seen of James Cameron, which is one of the richest film in the world so far, he got this idea from this tussle between Nayamgiri tribes and Vedanta mining corporation. Okay, likewise, these fragile areas where our tribals and our indigenous people are located has been exploited mainly due to this corporate access to these areas. Apart from that, they are also exploiting the wildlife and biodiversity of these major areas. About 600 million people have been physically displaced as a part of development project. That means displacement in the name of development is a main issue. Displacement in the name of development is a main issue. Look, suppose we have our own land, okay, which we are inherited from our ancestors. But one day when the government comes and says that we are having a development project, then we have to displace to other places. There's an emotive connection we have on this our ancestral properties. So it is very difficult for us to leave this. So then issues comes. Also, this issue comes when they are not given proper monetary payment for their land. This is what the Adivasis were fighting for many decades so far since independence. As a result of this, there are certain legislation that came out like Forest Right Act, etc. Even today, also, even the current scenario, so the current government, which is giving the vision of Atmanirbhar Bharat, is again promoting mining in central India, especially where there is huge coal deposit. These are actually threatening the self-reliant aspect of Adivasis and other indigenous people of our country. So what is the author saying that these are leading to certain climate crisis, like extreme events like there will be super hot summer and very extreme temperature, cyclones, erratic rainfall. Example for this is in Ladakh, in many villages are being abandoned due to water shortage. Likewise, there are several other examples throughout our country where we can pick out examples where there is extreme events of climate change. Then how we can enable a sustainable development approach? So the biggest challenge so far is to maintain an ecological sustainability framework within our environment, within our economic development program by giving proper livelihood, security, and dignity. So there are certain initiatives that our government have already taken to carry out this. Again, we can move out with certain other programs like we should have a bottom-up approach from the local level by empowering Panchayati Raj institutions, women at the focal point of development, which can enable the whole or uplift the whole social structure. That means in policy orientation, especially in the climate change policy orientation, the woman should be taken at the center stage and promoting traditional farming system. Example, organic farming, which can again enable more sustainable approach in our farming techniques. So several other aspects like community-led tourism. That means which will again provide a livelihood opportunity for the community in that particular region. Example is homestay tourism, and then adventure tourism in these areas, etc. is also an important aspect. Apart from that, in protected area, example there is national park or biosphere reserve, they should be preserved from a bottom-up approach. That means people from that locality should be involved as a stakeholder in their protection and conservation, rather than having a top-down approach. That means from ministerial level to lower level. Okay. Only people at the bottom level know the ground reality rather than those who are making policies from the ministry level. So, what can be the certain indicator that can lead to enabling sustainability? According to United Nations Environmental Program Indicator, there are certain activities that can be carried out to maintain sustainability. First one is an organic farming, then land and water regeneration, renewable energy, community health, eco-friendly construction, then ecotourism, small-scale manufacturing, etc. Okay, linking these activities with programs like Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Program, that means MG Narega. These activities can be linked to MG Narega, which can enhance an income security to people at the local level, so which will further provide more income security to people at the local level. So in order to go through that development pathway, the fundamental restructuring is needed for our economy and governance structure. So there should be a shift away from infrastructure and industrialization, and that means replacing mega corporation to cooperatives and ensuring community rights of common. That means we should replace corporates with co- cooperatives. That means people's initiative. People's initiative. Okay. Only then we can maintain sustainability for human rights and rights of nature. That means both human rights and rights of nature can be maintained in an equilibrium way. So for that we need a collective mobilization of whom from various stakeholders like industrial workers, farmers, fishers, pastoralists, urban and rural youth, women and the disabled, LGBTQ and others. So only having this collective mobilization of these stakeholders, we can achieve our vision of Amrit of our Atmanirbhar Bharat, our vision for a developing nation in 2047. So this is what the article is all about. Now let's look into next article for today's discussion. So next article is about our criminal justice reform, which tells about a premature release of prisoners without discretion and wisdom. So what is the context? Recently there was a release of prisoners who were convicted in the Gujarat communal pogrom in 2002. So their remission was questionable, and the author is saying that there is sufficient reform is needed for in granting bail and others in such a heinous crime. So whenever, if for example, if any person who does a heinous crime as a part of a political affinity, he might be in jail, but at the same time when this political party comes into power, he can be given remission at that time under the compulsion of this political party. So there should be strict norms in giving remissions. This is what the author is saying. Okay. So now next article is about an importance of science and technology. So author is saying that although we have celebrated our 75 years of our Independence Day celebration last day, but in order to have a high standard or high quality of life, it is very much essential. Now we should shift our focus on science and technology. So science and technology will be at the core of our development stage. So now let's look into what is the issues concerning within this sector of science and technology, what can be done forward. Let's look into that. So what is the author is arguing about? He is saying that first of all the country needs to spend much monetary energy in research and development in order to enhance its science and technology sector. So it is saying that we must spend around 4% of our GDP on R&D. Then only we can drive our country into a path of science and innovation. So he is citing example of Israel and South Korea, who are prime examples that can drive their respective economies by spending nearly 5% of GDP on R&D, especially Israel. Even it is a small country, which have its own very historical border issues and other problems within the country. Still, every whole world is feared about Israel mainly because of its sophisticated technology in defense and other sectors. So it is mainly they achieved this because of their huge spending in GDP. So they are technologically well empowered. That's why they are standing ahead of the tide when compared to other countries. So, so the question that we that is raising is that how this money is spent is very important at the macro level. How and where the money has to be spent is a very important. We must focus on building physical and intellectual infrastructure across the country, especially focusing our university. So we already know the university situation of our country so far. There are issues of autonomy in our university. There are very political interference in university. Our R&D is very poor in our university. This is visible in our poor ranking, in poor global ranking. Okay, this is very much visible in our poor global ranking. So we must focus on our universities. We must enhance their infrastructure at both physical and intellectual level. India cannot compete at the global stage unless we have a very poor infrastructure of its university, and it needs to be upgraded. So second aspect, the author is saying that before any policy change taken effect, individual institutions must implement process to accommodate the large budget. That means before we are giving huge budget to any institution, there must be proper changes within the institution in order to implement these changes. For that, they require a standardizing procedures across the institution, borrowing best practice from global counterparts. For an example given that the government encourages public-private partnership. Each grant-receiving institution must have internal procedures to handle their scientists' requests to facilitate academic-industry collaboration. So this is a very important example. That means if government is giving there's a government program known as TechUp, which mainly gives funds to these institutions. So these institutions should be enabled to handle these funds. So currently there is programs like academic industrial collaborations with foreign university in order to have more ideas to be exchanged with foreign and our counter institution within the country. So on this aspect, let's look into what are the major issues or challenges which are facing while strengthening our infrastructure. First and foremost is inadequate staffing. There is not proper amount of human resource for handling these resources. Lack of transparency in the fund dispersal. This is mainly evident from the corrupt practices that are occurring in these universities and these institutions. Lack of rigorous international standard review. There is no much review on the progress that we have taken in every institution. Delay in fund dispersal. This is very much evident that there is lack of funds in every activities in our institution. And outdated appraisal system. So our current appraisal system, or system that gives appraisal to various work we have done, is very old for our scientists to be on track. So what can be the way out? So the author is saying that in order to have best infrastructure, first of all, we must extract out from the best practices, especially from industries and abroad, and from our industries, government-run industries also. And also involving the IT majors like data consulting, outsourcing some of the work to these IT majors will further help in innovating new ideas in the field of R&D. Now, second is enhancing the decision making process and having a transparent, fair, and faster decision making, which is very much essential to maintain a good informative structure within the university system, which will help in research and development within that institution. So this is all about this article. Let's look into next article. The next article is about ethanol blending, and how is this ethanol extracted, what are the environmental concerns with respect to this process. So this is the and a projection by our think tank Nidi Ayog. So NITI Aayog is projecting that the ethanol 20 goal of blending by 2025 will help in providing more ethanol supply to our biofuels. So but it is faced with several challenges. This is the graphs which is showing that our ethanol addition is increasing year by year. Okay. So now let's look into what is this ethanol blending all about. So what is this ethanol? It is one of the principal biofuels which is naturally produced by fermentation of sugar by yeast or via petrochemical process such as ethylene hydration. So ethanol is in organic chemistry we have learned about that ethanol is nothing but CH3 CH2OH. That means it is an alcohol. This OH is an alcohol radical. So this alcohol radical is added to this compound known as ethylene. This ethylene is hydrated, that means CH3CH3. This is known as ethylene. It is hydrated, that means water is or steam is added under industrial process. From that it leads to ethanol. So this process of producing ethanol is known as ethanol blending. This is known as ethanol. It is known as ethanol production, and this ethanol is a major principal biofuel. So currently we are having a ethanol blending program. So what is this program is aimed about? This program is mainly focused upon reducing countries' dependence on oil imports, which help in cutting down carbon emission and boosting farmers' income. So what's the target the government have so far? The government target about 20% of ethanol blending in petrol to 2025 from 2030. That means government tries to have a 20% ethanol in its petrol from 2025 level, which starts from 2030. That from 2030 onwards, government will have a blending of 20% of ethanol in petrol products. So now let us look into what is the significance of ethanol blending. So one of the major significance that this ethanol blending will help to reduce the dependency on our biofuel, that is especially petrol. Thus it will help in reducing the dependency of our imported and expensive polluting petroleum. We have been depending upon West Asia, especially the Arabian Peninsula region, for the petrol. So India's mainly about 80% of its imports are made from this West Asian region in the form of petroleum. This we can save money. So whenever our import on petroleum reduces, we have so much money in our fiscal exchequer, which will reduce the fiscal deficit of our country. So it is very much essential for reducing our fiscal deficit, less polluting. Since petroleum is a more polluting fuel, this ethanol blending will reduce the pollution level with blending with petroleum in automobiles. But there are certain issues and challenges relating to it. First and foremost issue, which was shown up in the National Policy of Biofuel, which prioritizes our food grains in conversion to this biofuel. That means the food grains we produced were converted to biofuels, were diverted to biofuels. What happens? So more and more fuels will be produced at the same time. More and more people will be at the hunger level. So there is an increased risk of hunger level also by this diversion. So more and more people who are the beneficiaries of public distribution system will not get sufficient sufficient food grains for the reducing hunger. So India already is at a very poor level at the World Hunger Index, which is around 101st among 116 countries. It is a very poor performance for a country. And another one is cost. So the cost is very high in the production of biofuel, especially the initial cost of land and machinery which is necessary for conversion of these food grains to biofuel is very high. Water use. Massive quantities of water are required for proper irrigation of this biofuel, so it will give to more water stress situation. Then efficiency. The fossil fuel produce more energy than some of the biofuels. That means a 1 gallon of ethanol produces less energy as compared to 1 gallon of gasoline. So in case of calorie production also, this fossil fuels are much more than these biofuels. So what is the way forward? So author is saying that one of the important pathway will be producing ethanol from the waste. Rather than producing it from food grain, we can produce it from our waste materials itself. Example is that there are strong waste from our construction site, waste from their used food items, etc. From that waste, we must find a way out for producing ethanol. And water crisis. So new ethanol policy should ensure that it does not drive farmers towards a water-intensive crop. So for making in this biofuel possible, we should not cultivate water-intensive crops. It will further deplete our water table and will lead to a huge problem of water stress in our country. Then prioritize crop production. That means there should be a priority given to crop production, especially these food crops should be grown mainly for our consumption purpose. Such food grains should be promoted rather than these biofuel crops. Okay. Then there should be alternate mechanism also should be promoted, especially e-vehicles should be promoted along with this biofuel policy. So it will have a combination of both. So on this backdrop, let us look into a previous year question asked on national policy of biofuels. So the question is about which are the raw materials which can be used for the production of biofuels. So asked in year 2020. So this is a classic case of a question where we should reach answer by applying logic. This is a classic civil service prelims question where we will this what out of box thinking can reach to an answer. Okay. First of all, we can't really answer this question by memorizing all the material which can be used for biofuels. So we must apply our logic on this. So let's look by option one by one. Cassava. Cassava is an imported food grain which is used for producing biofuel. This is a common information that you should or you will learn while studying biofuel topic. Second is damaged wheat grains. This we already studied that the waste food grains can be used for production of biofuel. Then comes groundnut seed. So this groundnut seed is an oil producing seed. Okay. So this groundnut oil is very much in demand first of all. Conversion of this oil producing seed to biofuel is itself very high cost production. Apart from that, this oil producing biofuels is damaging to the engine. So it is very much not possible to produce a groundnut seed, use groundnut seed for biofuel production. So we can eliminate option 3. So when we eliminate option 3 itself, we will reach the answer to option A. So this is a classic civil service prelims questions where you should apply your logic while reaching to the answer. So you should have a general information about what are the different type of crops or how these groundnut seeds are used, what is the significance of groundnut oil. Likewise, you should have a general information. From that, you must reach the answer. So the correct answer is option A. So it is mentioned in National Policy of Biofuels. So you must have a logic correlation in order to reach the answer. Otherwise, it is practically impossible to memorize all these things. Okay. So the next news is about a Chinese military vessel arrives in Sri Lanka. So it is in news for the past few days where a Chinese military vessel is reaching in a port known as Hambantota. So this vessel which is reaching in the Hambantota. So this is a classic case of China's debt trap diplomacy. This Hambantota port was leased to China for 500 years something by Sri Lankan government as a part of their Belt and Road initiative. So currently, we know already the pathetic situation of Sri Lanka's economy, and around that, Chinese is pressuring this Sri Lanka with more and more debt repayment. So Sri Lanka is persuaded in order to tilt their own interest to Chinese. So what the issue for India is that this vessel, which is a very spy vessel, can have an important look on vulnerable locations of our country, example Kudankulam nuclear plant, ISRO's major station at Trivandrum, VSC, some urban centers like Mumbai, Bangalore, everything comes which and the coastline will be under their radar. So this Sri Lanka is very much notorious because they always place in both China and India card for their survival. So what we should look is that in coming days we will see how these things will turn around in the Indian Ocean region. Okay, this is all about for this news. Now let's look into the next news. So next news is about in a case known as Bilkis case in Gujarat. These convicts who were convicted for imprisonment is asking remission as per old policy. That means these convicts is demanding remission according to an old policy which existed at the time of their conviction. So this is a classic case of the need for having a criminal justice reform. A classic example for this is that Delhi gang rape, which is famously known as Nirbhaya case. In Nirbhaya, the heinous crime which was carried out by the juvenile. But this juvenile is still roaming around in the society itself. It is said that he is working somewhere in Bangalore. So our justice system, which is a retributive justice system, is always looking in our past old policies. However, the nature and the type of crime has changed throughout the time. So this is the main issue that we are discussing in this article. On this, we also look into the various provision of pardoning provisions of both governor and president. What is the context? Additional Chief Secretary of Gujarat told the application for remission was considered due to the completion of 14 years in jail and other factors such as age, nature and crime of behavior. So it was the major ground for taking up the remission request by the additional Chief Secretary. So there was a decision by Supreme Court or judgment by Supreme Court. Supreme Court recently held that a governor of a state can pardon prisoners, including death row ones, and even before they have served minimum 14 years of prison sentence. That means the governor of state have power to pardon prisoners or give some benefit to these prisoners who have served a minimum of 14 years of prison, who have served around minimum 14 years of prison sentence. And this governor's power to pardon overrides a provision in CRPC section 433A which mandates that a person's sentence can be remitted only after 14 years of jail. That means this pardoning power of president is in controversy with a provision of CRPC which says that only after completing this 14 years only he can be pardoned. So this was taken into the question where the court noted that the sovereign power of a governor to pardon a prisoner under Article 161 is actually exercised by the state government, not the governor on his own. That means this article is very important. This Article 161 gives power to the governor to pardon this conviction, but actually this pardoning is given by the state government. It is the state government who suggests the name to the governor. The governor only approves these suggestions given by the state government. Thus this pardoning decision is actually given by the appropriate government and it is given to the head of the state, that is governor. So the order which is issued is actually the order of the government who is working in the state rather than governor's approval. So such a controversy should not be shown up since it is the will of the people. That means will of people through the government is actually exercised rather than the governor itself. So now let's look into the pardoning power of both president and governor. So Article 161 and Article 72 of the Constitution These two articles specifies or empowers both president and governors to power to grant pardons, reprise, respite or remission, or to suspend, remit or commute the sentence of a person. So these are certain provisions in regarding this pardoning power of both president and governor. So what are the different pardoning power of president? Different pardoning power of president is according to the jurisdiction they have the power. So a president can pardon a certain punishment or sentence for an offense against union law. He can also pardon against a court martial. He can also pardon a death sentence. So he can pardon a union law, court martial and death sentence. The pardoning power of the governor extends to the sentence of any person convicted of any of the offences in state law. At the same time, the similar provision is therefore power is for governor in state law, but the governor cannot pardon a death sentence under court martial. So when a court martial or a court by military is giving something rule, a governor cannot pardon that. It is only the president that has power, which is an important fact for prelims usually asked. Okay. At the same time, the scope of pardoning power of the president under Article 72 is wider than the pardoning power of governor under Article 161. This is an important aspect, a major difference between the power of president and governor's office. The president has wider pardoning power when compared to governor under Article 172, 161 and 72 concept. So now let's look into what are the different meanings or different terms used in this pardoning power. First is pardon. So what this pardon means? It means that it removes both sentence and the conviction and completely absolves the convict from all sentence. That means if a person is convicted for 15 years in a rigorous imprisonment, that means he will be in imprisonment without any bail for 15 years. But when he is given this pardon, both this 15 years and this nature of this imprisonment is removed. Now the second type is commutation. It denotes as a substitution of one form of punishment with a light form of punishment. That means in this form of punishment, he will be punished for 15 years, but this rigorous imprisonment will be changed to some lighter one, smaller type of punishment. Then remission. So remission, it implies reducing the period of sentence without changing his character. That means he will be punished for 15 years in rigorous imprisonment, but his rigorous imprisonment will not be changed. At the same time, the time or duration will be changed to 7 or 6 years, something like that. It is known as remission. A respite. It denotes awarding a lesser sentence in place of one originally awarded due to some special fact, example physical disability, pregnancy, etc. That means instead of this 15 years rigorous imprisonment, he must be given 7 years with lighter imprisonment provision, especially on the fact of having certain special fact like physical disability, pregnancy, etc. Then comes reprieve. It implies a stay on the execution of sentence for temporary period. That means if the convict has a certain life-threatening disease, then his execution will be stayed under certain circumstances. Such provision is known as reprieve. So please remember or understand these different terms regarding this pardoning power. It is very important. Okay. So this is all for today's discussion. And there is small request. Please in the comment box section, please send your suggestion about the discussion. What you need as an add-on in discussion. What are the other material that you needed for examination? We will be very happy to provide that. We have already running 2 programs of editorial discussion and our prelims pointer discussion also. In future we are going to add some more things. So I am just asking your suggestion. What are your demands? Okay. So hopefully you enjoyed this discussion. So please kindly subscribe to our channel for the future updates. Thank you so much.